Hi, this is James on Gimmerish FM, and you're listening to Normal People, the podcast. Yeah, this is a little mini-series I'm putting together to introduce my short film, Normal People, which is going to be broadcast on ABC2 in January 2017. If you're listening to this podcast as it comes out, as a little reward for my Gimmerish FM listeners, I'm letting you know the time that it'll be on, if you would like the novelty of watching something on live TV, is 10 p.m. Friday the 13th of January 2017. The film only goes for about 7 minutes, so be careful because it could be over before you notice it. Anyway, it is being broadcast in very low definition, so I can't recommend it. I would recommend, if you really want to enjoy my movie, I would recommend waiting to see it in high definition or 4K, which is what we showed it in. But the ABC doesn't do that. Everything you need to know about watching Normal People you can find at normalpeople.gimmerish.com. But let's get to the podcast, shall we? Basically, the concept for this podcast is to have intimate one-on-one chats with a few of the people I met working on the film. Next up is John. John is the director of photography on Normal People. He is a native of Canada. Did he watch Degrassi when he grew up? That is the big question. Here we go. Hello and welcome to Gimmerish FM. This is James speaking, and I am joined by another member of the Normal People crew. I kind of wanted to do a sort of behind-the-scenes podcast series with some of the people who worked on a short film that I made last year called Normal People, because I figured the people who worked on it are anything but normal. Mm-hmm. And I'm joined tonight by John, the cinematographer.
Hello.
Slash camera opera slash DOP, whatever they get called these days.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what to call myself.
If you see the movie, all the bad shots are mine, all the really good looking shots are his.
Oh.
I was watching that day, I was like, oh, you can tell that he got some good setup time for that shot because it looks really good. So, John, how did you come to be on Normal People?
I think it was the Facebook Perth Film Network group.
All right, but where were you born?
Oh, sorry. Oh, okay.
I made you walk into that.
I was born in Peterborough, Ontario, home of the Pete's. And then
Ontario, where's that?
That is in Canada, same province as Toronto. Toronto's a bit more famous than Peterborough.
Is that, if I'm looking at a map of Canada, what sort of quadrant is that?
That's the sneaky little bit that dips into America's head at the top.
Yeah.
So we kind of, if you drew the map a different way, we're sort of in America, but we happen to have different benefits, Canadian benefits.
Someone was saying that the most southern Canadian section, province, or part, which is Ontario?
Yes.
Yeah, is there are 27 American states above that.
27 American.
At least have a bit that goes above that.
I believe that. Yeah.
Which is more than half of their states. When I think about it, it's like you're almost all north.
Yeah. Yeah. I would get that when I used to work at a call center, one of my crappy jobs. We'd have Americans call in north of us, and they would say, oh, what's your accent? Blah, blah, blah. I'd be like, I'm calling from, near Toronto, and try to give them a clue. And they'd be like, what's the weather like up there? And they didn't know. Most of people from Peterborough don't know. I don't know. But yeah, it's funny. It's funny how you think about countries.
So, what is Peterborough? Is it a town or a city?
It's like Bunbury. 66,000 people roughly, or at least that's what it was last time I checked. Sleepy town. I think it's Canada's retirement capital. Mega capital.
All right. Kind of like the Florida or the Gold Coast of America, Australia.
Yeah, I guess, I don't know why, but there's a lot of, retirement homes and a lot of nurses. So if you want a job in Peterborough, be a nurse.
Okay.
That's why I'm not there.
And so how far away from Toronto? Is it the same distance as Bunbury?
I can't remember how far away Bunbury is now from here, but it's an hour and a half drive.
Okay, yeah.
Give or take.
It's pretty similar.
Yeah. And so, pretty much on par. Same amount of, intellect distribution. We've got some smarties and some dummies, and I'm assuming no one from Peterborough is listening to this.
And you lived there your whole life?
Until I was 18.
And then what, you grew up and moved out of the nest?
Yeah, I grew out of you call it the Peter Patch. That's what you call it. Went to a place called Hamilton, which is bigger, but also has like a mixed reputation depending on who you ask.
Is that same province? Same
province, and this time it's an hour south of Toronto.
Okay.
And it's got a lot of character, so it's kind of a working class steel town. They call it Steel Town.
Yeah.
But it used to be a rich person's city in the 50s, and steel factories started to close. I believe it was in the 70s or 80s, and then it got a whole bunch of problems. But it still had a really good university. So McMaster is the university there, really good campus. So if you're in that bubble and if you're a student, it's great. If you're trying to raise a family, maybe in the 90s it was kind of rough. And now a lot of people are buying houses in Hamilton because after a while, like, you know, Toronto, it's apartments, it's like $1 million apartments, and you can't really afford that. So people are going to dip down. This is all really boring, by the way. I'm really sorry. But
all right, but what took you to Hamilton rather than like somewhere like Toronto, just because it's cheaper?
No. Looking back, I should have gone straight to Toronto. And I went to study business. At the time, I was like, oh, I want to be in the music industry. I want to be in the music business, so I will take business in university. And didn't make the connection that, like, you should just go to gigs and get to know musicians. And if you're good at marketing bands, you just sort of grow into it. I just sort of thought, well, I'll take business because music is a business. And that was really boring. So it took me a while to finish. And eventually I made it to Toronto after 6 years, plugging away at in Hamilton.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
But why did you go to Toronto? Still pursuing music business stuff?
Oh, why to go to Toronto? It was kind of one of those things. It was like, you know, went to Hamilton, really stretched out that 4-year thing, did a gap year in France as well. And then when I came back, I thought, what am I going to do? Had a friend in Toronto. And so I thought, okay, fine. We'll, give it a go. Because it's the fourth biggest city in North America. So I thought, this is good enough. Almost as good as New York.
Yeah.
It's kind of hard for Canadians to live in the U.S. as well. So may as well give it a shot in Toronto.
Yeah, I guess I'm one of those people that's like, I don't get why you would live in the U.S.
It'd be good for a vacation, right? But yeah.
Yeah, I have a fantasy if I live in Lotto, maybe I'll do a podcast tour in a camper van or something, or an RV cool, as they call it. But I'll be stressing out about living in this crazy country that could explode at any second.
Yeah, it's fascinating and horrifying.
Okay, so when did you get into film stuff?
When I was studying business, and I went away to France for like a little exchange, and all the classes I was taking were really dry as well. Like, I think one was called European Tax Law, and I was really used to the teachers that had all the slides, and they had like all the diagrams, and they would really kind of make it interactive and all this type of thing. And then sitting in this classroom where there'd be some old Belgian guy just talking about tax, and he would give you these examples about like person A, person B, person C, and I'd be like, well, where on the slideshow is person A, B, and C? I don't see anything. So I couldn't really focus. I was just like, this is horrible. And so I started dropping those classes, and instead I would just go out and film like all the cliche things, but like the street performers or the planes and all that, because I had one of those like old school white MacBooks and kind of a crappy like camcorder thing. And I just found myself doing it. So I wasn't necessarily trying to do anything towards a career in film, but I just kind of found myself doing that anyways, and ditching these classes. And so that's when I started to figure out maybe I should do that. So I was like 21, and that's when I was doing that. Yeah. So, it's all been kind of just sort of self-teaching and, building up the reel, and I don't know.
So how long were you doing film stuff in Canada?
I guess, I moved here when I was it 28, 29? I think 29. And I started teaching myself and all that when I was 21. So I guess 7 years, but I think I was only actually making money doing it for 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
So the first 3 were like entering contests.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And doing stuff for friends, like bands and things like that. Like I did this one music video for a friend's band, and then they kind of took it. It was like a silhouette with like paper cutouts of animals, taking back their nature against like construction and big buildings and stuff. And friend's band put it out, and it had like a few views and that. And they added some animations to it and stuff, and kind of made it a little bit different. And I took the original that we had shot and just put a track by Hot Chip on it. And I think within like a couple of days or something, Hot Chip's manager saw it somehow, and he said like, "Oh, this video is really cute. Can we put it on our website and kind of credit you for it?" I'm like, "Okay." And so I had to kind of lie a little bit and say that I made this for Hot Chip, but it was kind of more that I took the original, put a song on there, and said, "Oh, well, you know, this kind of fits this song too." And then it just kind of like, you know, they got a hold of it. But that was kind of a fun thing and sort of encouraged me to keep going, I guess.
Mm-hmm. So, how did you come to be in Australia?
Met my girlfriend, who's from Perth, in Toronto at a bar down the street from my house. And then we started...
What was she doing there?
She was doing a working holiday. At first, I think she wanted to do a working holiday in the U.S. somewhere. And then that was kind of complicated, and the U.S. is kind of fucked as well. And so then she was deciding on maybe Vancouver or Banff, but then she thought, well, there might be a lot of Australians there, so Toronto might be a little bit more of a like a Canadian feel to it. So then she went there, and I think just a couple of months after she arrived, I met her, and I just sort of, you know, we were both out at this bar, and then I just sort of walked up to her, and I was like, "Hey," I think that's what I said to her, really dumb sounding, "Hey." And she was too drunk to realize that that sounded dumb. And then we kept in touch, I guess, and then started dating a little while after. And then had a really brutal 2 winters, like just really, really cold. And then she would show me photos of Perth, and she's like, "Yeah, I grew up like..."
And she was still in Canada, or was this long distance?
Oh, she was still in Canada. Yeah. So she would just like get out her laptop and be like, "Look, this is where I used to live." And then I saw that. And then I guess Canadians can come over here for a year, and then if they want to extend it, they have to work on a farm and they get another year. Or you could be sponsored after a year. So she sponsored me. So I've been here now for like a year and a half, I think. But time does go by. Like it just, you know, it does not feel like 18 months ago when I first got here. Not at all.
Okay. So you didn't have to work on a farm?
No. And it's funny because now I'm looking at farms in Europe that I could work at for maybe 3 months, the exact time that you would need in Australia to extend your visa. But the motivation is to maybe learn a language or something. Whereas here I would just learn, I guess it's called Aka.
Mm-hmm. Did you have to learn, I mean, you know, some part of your country is French speaking.
Yep.
Did you have to learn that?
Yeah. You have the option in grade 10 to stop. But up until that point, you are getting some French. My mom was a French teacher. And she was really good, I guess, at keeping students' attention because they're complete shits, I guess, because most of them don't want to be there. Yeah. Like you have one, like Martin Prince, who really wants to be there, and then everyone else is like, "I hate French." And so she really kind of held the court, and she was like a celebrity. So like kids would chase our van when we drive through the suburbs. Like if she wanted to drop me off at a friend's house, her students at the other school would see her and they'd be like, "Madame, madame." And anytime we'd go grocery shopping, it'd be like, "Hey, madame." Like they loved her. But she didn't really teach me at home. I think just because she was like, well, I'm kind of not working now, so don't want to bother.
Is she from Quebec?
She's from Holland.
Okay.
And I guess she just really got into the idea of teaching French because at the time they really needed them, and she likes languages. So, yeah. And then I dropped it when I was in grade 10. So But then I lived in France after, and then kind of learned it because there was a girl I liked who only spoke French and Spanish. So I was like, oh, okay, French is a bit easier because I've been, you've got the background. But yeah, never really became fluent. Never ended up dating that girl. Such is life.
Yeah. I stayed in Paris once for a few weeks, and I like rented an apartment, kind of like Airbnb style, and the person who looked, the landlord, I guess, the person whose apartment was like a very like stereotypical beautiful French woman, and she didn't speak English, so it was doomed from the start. Because I had no idea what she was saying, because I think she was saying like, oh, do you want to go out and do something? I'm like, I have no idea. But she was a chain smoker, which was a bit off-putting. But
yeah, because that's the silver lining. Be like, oh, would have been gross.
Yeah.
Life would have been horrible.
Well, because, I just heard so many cliches about everyone smokes in Paris, and then this is the one person I had contact with there smoked, and I was just like, wasn't sure if I was part of the Matrix or not.
Yeah, no, I remember seeing the French people when I first arrived, and they sort of all had like 45-year-old faces, the guys. I remember seeing them. They all just sort of had that I can't even think of like the right face, like Dean Martin from the Rat Pack, like kind of that aged, still classy, but kind of really kind of beat up from being in a lot of smoky lounges and drinking a lot of brandy. But they were like 20 years old with this really aged face and, hacking away on these darts. And I was just like, oh, these are my students that I'm going to be learning with. So I felt very out of place. I think I had skate shoes on, a really stupid hat, and they were all dressed like H&M models.
So were you doing film?
No, business.
That's right. You're doing business.
Yeah.
But you weren't really taking interest into your sort of videoing stuff on the side. Yeah.
I think within the first 2 months that I even arrived in Hamilton, after those business classes, I told my parents, like, yeah, I need to drop this. And they're like, you got to keep going. You can't stop now. It's like, well, hold on. There's still 3.8 years left of this. I could probably stop now.
Yeah.
But, so I just sort of did that, and I don't know. I still see jobs now posted that say like must have an undergrad in film and stuff like that. And I think, oh, can you just look at my reel and forget all that?
Right.
It's that's the one kind of thorn in my side about not taking it, but hopefully it doesn't matter.
I guess I never apply for those kinds of jobs. I'm always looking for like the most terror job. Yeah. That, I can use my spare brain cycles for other thoughts while I'm on the job.
That's a good approach, I think. Some of these jobs do want almost like it's not even like it's a creative job. You just happen to be using cameras, I think. Some of these where you're like their content producer.
Oh, right.
And you have to kind of, so maybe it's not even.
There's a problem with that in Perth because a lot of people in Perth don't actually like sort of understand the internet. So they're like, oh God, we got to get a digital content producer. Let's just see who has a degree in digital content producing, when those people, from what I experienced, the people who come out of university doing that stuff have no idea what they're doing. It's the people who actually just do it under their own steam that are usually much better at that kind of stuff. Yeah. At least if I was hiring someone to publicize my movie or whatever. Yeah. I'll be looking for someone who's independent rather than has some uni background.
That's the thing. I think if I'm ever in some sort of successful position to be like, I'm going to pass on whatever the torch. Yeah. I would look for an exact copy of me 20 years younger in some sort of narcissistic kind of way and reward them for being partially, I don't know, me.
Yeah, I mean, that's not to say that uni people, but they don't get experience until they get that job, and then they get some experience from just being thrown into the fire. Yeah. But it takes a few years to iron out their kinks, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of it is just throwing it, like either university throws you into the fire or you throw yourself in. And I think for me, when I started, I guess, breaking into the Toronto production industry. It was just going on Craigslist and seeing, kind of seeing how it really works, which is really just someone gets delegated the job of finding production assistants, and they don't really have time to interview a bunch of people, so they're going to put a thing out there. People are going to respond. And sometimes it's just through Craigslist. And I remember, for me, it was like I wanted to be on set. I just wanted to know what it was like to be on set for a commercial. And it was like Toronto's very diverse. So it was like a Punjab market ad for a grocery store called No Frills. And, it was just sort of a typical ad. It's like an Indian family in their kitchen, kind of, going through the groceries. And it was pretty dry, pretty standard. But for me, I was just like, oh, wow, like I have no idea what's going on. So I had to get a van and I had to roll mats. And I was like, what does rolling mats mean?
Yeah.
And so I didn't even know what that was. And then the art director on set was like, can we get some people who aren't fucking, doing this for the first goddamn time? And so I was just like, oh, okay, I'm kind of busted here. But after a while, I was sort of like on good terms with them, and I loved everything about it. I loved the craft table, everything about it. And it was the only thing that made sense. And all those business classes, I was like, oh, finally, this makes sense. Those didn't. I'm making the right choice here.
Yeah.
And then just continued that sort of line of like production assisting work and sort of spying on people and how they work and trying to pick up what you can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you came to Perth. How did you assimilate? Like you wanted to do film stuff, I guess. Like you're on Facebook looking for groups straight away, or
that was kind of a sobering experience because the last like 2 years in Toronto, I had my own little corner office for this company, and I was just sort of their video person, and there was like a couple of guys above me, and we just worked on stuff, but it was salary, so it was steady work, and that's kind of the dream, but also a corner office, so people don't really bug you a lot. They just kind of knock on the door. They're like, is the edit ready? You're like, yes or no. So that was great. And then I came here, and suddenly I was, on Gumtree looking at, anything really. I just sort of wanted to start working right away so I wouldn't get into too much debt. And so I thought, the video thing's going to probably come over time. But right now I'm going to need to just get a job, even in hospitality, so I can meet people that way.
Yeah.
And so it was kind of depressing because like I went to, I think it was Kmart, and I'm buying like a white button-up shirt and stuff. I'm like, well, maybe I'll have to, work in a like Italian restaurant, or who knows what I'll have to be doing, right? So I'm like buying all this kind of service industry stuff, and I'm just like, I had it so good over there. What am I doing? It's not too late to tell them that I want to go back, So I started out just sort of doing the, working in bars and stuff. But I mean, it's good work. It was just sort of a jump down. It felt like a jump back down.
Yeah.
After 2 years in an office, you're like, oh shit. But now it's fairly cruisy, I guess. Yeah.
So what else are you working on other than? Oh well, I guess you saw the call for normal people,
mm-hmm.
and I made you like come in and say, what's what. Is anything else like that? Have you applied for other things that you're not running yourself?
Yes and no, I guess. I haven't seen too many that are like that, actually. Too many posts that are just like, hey, I'm looking for a cinematographer. What I liked about it was that it was very open to non-hardcore people.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's the thing. I'm not as hardcore with the gear and stuff as other people, but I'll happily rent gear and like try to make things good. But some people have like $50,000 worth of gear,
mm-hmm.
and it makes me nervous thinking like having that much worth of gear.
Yeah.
So it was a great sort of opportunity that it was, hey, I'm going to meet you, and if you used the A7S before, great. Let's go. It's perfect. It was a learning opportunity because I hadn't shot anything like that before either.
Yeah.
Yeah. Lots of kind of more standard corporate video or things for myself, but not on a set with like actors and dialogue and stuff.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I interviewed a bunch of people, and I really didn't. It was going to be such a I knew it was going to be a bit of a mess of a shoot just because of the way it was sort of. It just happened, and it's like, okay, we've got to get this thing done, but I also don't want to hire a bunch of like sort of Nazi people who will, counting the clock.
Yeah.
As to when they knock off kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it was very interesting because a bunch of people came in and they had sort of lots of ideas, but it didn't seem to relate to anything to what the project was.
Yeah.
And so I was just looking for people who just seemed like, yeah, it would be nice to get along with them. Yeah.
That's half of it.
I went for personality over anything else because I was just like, I don't know if these guys are BSing me or not.
Well, it's very nice of you to say. Yeah. I've seen that. Oh, sorry. Cut you off. Well, just in terms of like the camera stuff and the camera people, you get a whole, I don't know, mixed bag of personality types, I guess, with video people, like anything really, but some of them I think like it for how technical it is.
Yeah.
And it's almost like, and I hope I'm not generalizing here, but the certain people, these 1% of these camera people, I'll say that, who are very technical, almost I think they feel like because they have the camera and they have the gear, they don't need to be nice.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, no, you could be nice too.
I kind of wish I was more, because I'm a bit of a tech geek, I guess, but there's just too much to learn. I can't fit it all on my brain. So I'm like, okay, I only want tech to the point where this will help me do things easier and quicker. Even if you don't get the best out of it.
Yeah.
Like we were recording in like ProRes rather than RAW, just so I know I can just put it into the edit thing and start editing straight away without that middle thing, which I'm sure is like some people just go.
Yeah.
There's probably people just going, oh my God, we think he didn't shoot in RAW.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Wait, is that 8-bit or 10-bit?
Oh yeah, 444s and how many CMYKs or something.
Yeah, how many? There's only 10 CMYKs.
But it ended up being a mess because like we had to like submit it for broadcast. We had to pay someone to like go and correct all the stuff that I had intentionally made the way it was. Do
you mean the scenes where it was like a lot of lighting?
Yeah.
And it was like super magenta.
Yeah, the person, and that person went through and because I wasn't there to, because it was like, oh, we got to get this in. I wasn't there to supervise because I was at work, and they just, I gave them I did a grade myself. I said, well, that's kind of what I want to look like, but their only priority was to get it to be, broadcast standard, which is like literally mathematics or something of how much luma or something you're allowed to have.
Yeah.
And they think this is all for standard definition television, which doesn't even exist anymore in Australia, but they still haven't, the bureaucracy hasn't got rid of the actual requirements.
Oh.
And anyway, they went through and color corrected so that assuming every light we used was natural white light.
Okay.
Do you know what I mean? Like,
so does that even mean they color corrected everything so that there's no purple anymore covering people?
Yeah, I think it looks kind of weird.
Okay.
But like, we're out in the park and they have yellow lights.
Yeah.
And they color corrected so they would look white lights. Do you know what I mean? That stuff.
That's funny that's a standard that you have to do that for.
I don't know if that was a standard. That's just that's what they were doing as they were getting into the standard.
I see.
I never had a debrief with them. I don't think they were being intentionally bad. It's just they were doing whatever it took to.
Yeah.
Because it was a speed thing. Because it's like, oh crap, we've got to send this off. even
Right.
though it doesn't actually, if it actually airs, it's not actually until August sometime.
Oh, August. All right.
And it might not even air. So we spent that money just on the hopes of it possibly airing late at night on a obscure standard definition channel.
Oh, shit. Well, is there going to be a web version that has the proper color?
Yeah.
Okay.
But no. Oh, as in on my Vimeo page, yeah.
Okay.
But they have exclusive access to put it on their internet player,
Right.
which is 1 megabit standard definition.
Their
Flash.
their online video player is also going to play the TV ready version.
Mm-hmm.
That sounds okay.
We don't have high definition.
Oh, I didn't mean
online
the
in
standard. I didn't mean the standard part. I just meant the fact that they want the graded for television version for their web player.
Yeah, that's just it's just part of their system.
Oh, I'm not going to judge. But yeah, it'd be good to have a version that I can put on my little portfolio and show it to my mom.
I think what you can do is you can take the ungraded version and you can grade it yourself to make it look how you want it, since you're the cinematographer.
Yes, the expert.
Anyway, what were we talking about?
What were we talking about?
Working on set. Oh yeah, being a geek with tech equipment and so what else are you working on that's not my project?
I'm working currently on an edit for someone who won, I guess last year they won Western Australian of the Year, and it's a fellow named Robert who does a lot of great things. But yeah, so I'm editing this project that they shot where it was intended for 2 really long, like really wide but rather short screens. And so on this giant big screen, it's going to play at the Crown, I guess at the casino.
Yeah.
For the awards night in June. Yeah, so it's like kind of a cool project because it's really super wide but not very tall in terms of resolution.
Mm-hmm.
And there's usually like 2 different things happening at the same time. So I had to make sure to edit it so that it wasn't over the top, like seizure inducing.
Mm-hmm.
So that was pretty cool because it was very like Western Australian, all the nature.
Did you shoot that stuff, or is it?
I didn't shoot it. No. The people who did shoot it though, I've heard their names before, so I hope to meet them soon because we haven't met yet. So there's that, and then on the weekend I'm going to shoot a music video for a band called Foam, and it's about a very keen business student, basically the person I never was, who has to give not a business student, sorry, an actual worker who has to give a presentation, but his roommate has poisoned him or drugged him. So he has to give this important presentation under the influence of drugs. And so all of his slides and like his graphics and like business cliches turn into more ominous, psychedelic death threats, and he thinks that his coworkers are trying to kill him.
All right.
Yeah.
And how did you came about this? People with Foam looking for someone, or were you looking for a band?
I guess they found me somehow, and got contacted through Facebook. And their idea, this was more their idea, and then I just sort of sat down with them. Actually, so Joel from the band, we met at Foam in Leaderville and discussed their music videos. That was nice. And
the band's called Foam.
Band's called Foam.
And you met at Foam.
Met at Foam.
Okay.
It's his first time there too.
Oh wow.
And he said, like, I like what they're doing with the name. It's good. Yeah, so plan that all out, and I'm going to shoot it this weekend. Hope it'll go well. I think they saw some of the stuff that I had done with Pat Chow, which is another band here. So I've done 3 videos for them. Actually, funny little normal people connection. The one video that I shot where I borrowed your smoke machine, I filmed that at the house where Ezra is now living.
And it's just up the road.
Yeah.
Oh, really? You know, I saw this guy walking along the street. And I'm like, look, that looks like Ezra, but
Yeah, it's him.
It probably was him.
Yeah,
What's he doing? He's living here or just...
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah, he was just chilling and on his laptop, and we were filming in this garage, throwing all this food and crafts and stuff at the lead singer.
Yeah.
And he was just kind of, Ezra's in the other room, just kind of hanging out.
Ezra is the lead in Normal People. Maybe I have to get... I think I wouldn't be able to get him on the podcast because I wasn't going to make him drive up from Denmark.
Yeah. It seems like it's really coming together, though. He's right up the street.
Well, that's awesome. And so is that what you're just looking for, like music videos and things?
I want to eventually, I want to sort of step up the ladder of, like funded projects. Maybe they're going to be total nightmares, though. I don't know. But I would like to, write scripts and submit them for funding and then get them funded and climb that ladder.
Yeah.
Sort of in the same sort of deal, like comedy, dark comedy.
Mm-hmm.
I think it just sort of takes patience, I guess, and I try to find other work along the way. And that happens too. But yeah, my girlfriend works 9 to 5, and so I'm always kind of in the morning. She has to leave at 8, and then I'm just kind of, on my laptop with some coffee and, hey, all right, see ya. And that's just kind of my routine. So it's sort of like emailing people or working on little projects, and can't complain really.
Yeah. Oh, sounds good.
Mm-hmm.
So you think you're like, oh, I'm loving it here, I'm going to settle here, or do you want to drag your girlfriend out back to Canada?
Well, the one thing that keeps me from going back to Canada is that it is very cold a lot of the time.
Yeah.
So she's transformed me into a bit of a weather snob now.
Yeah.
Whereas before I just sort of thought, well, this is how life is.
Yeah.
Because it is very bleak from about November until April.
Yeah.
Which is a lot of time, and just a lot of either cold or gray or both at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And now that I've experienced Perth weather, it would be hard to go back. But I guess, it's still a possibility. I also have, from my mom, I've got a Dutch passport, so I think I torture my girlfriend all the time with this idea that we should move to Europe and, not find jobs and lose all of our money. Because that's what I want to do, but I know that I'm told there's not a lot of jobs there.
All right. Yeah.
But I just really want to take up smoking and ride my bike everywhere, and I think Europe can offer that for me.
Have you spent much time in the Netherlands?
Before we moved here, we had a week holiday in Amsterdam.
Yeah.
And we rented half of a houseboat through Airbnb.
Yeah.
So we lived on a boat, and wow. I bought a pouch of tobacco and was rolling little tiny cigarettes and would smoke half of them and be like, "What are you doing?" And then I'd go for a bike ride and try to get the air through my lungs. But yeah, I really, really liked it. It was getting really rainy, really, really dark and gray and stuff. But I really just like I actually like really gray and depressing weather, as long as it's not winter and like frozen. Yeah. Speaking of Australia, there was that one music video by In Excess. Love Will Never Tear Us Apart? He's walking around Europe.
I don't know what it is. I always think of...
They Will Never Tear Us Apart, I think. He's walking around Prague and it's super cloudy. And I was like, is that what Europe's like? That's awesome. And I really wanted to go ever since I saw that music video.
Where's Prague? What city is that in? Our country?
Czech Republic.
All right. I think there's a few castles I wanted to go there in Czech Republic. I've got a list of castles I want to go to. Yeah,
Europe is just got a lot of castles there.
Mm-hmm.
Very castle heavy.
I went to a bunch in France, but I haven't been. I got another few on my list. I think one is in the Czech Republic somewhere, and the others are in Hungary.
I want to actually look at Europe the way that the Europeans see it, where they see the castles and they're like, yeah, I don't care. Mm-hmm. I just want money. and I'm not making any money here. And then they go to Australia and they're like, wow, the beach. Wow, this place is amazing. I want to see Australia the way that they see it. I want to see Europe the way that they see it.
Yeah.
So that I can kind of stop torturing myself with this idea that I need to move to Europe. And I can just enjoy Australia for what it is, which is very nice.
The problem with Europe, which isn't a problem, is they don't speak English. They do. Well, the thing is they do speak English. They speak enough English to the point where you can kind of go there and you can be ignorant of learning another language.
Yeah.
So it doesn't like push you to learn it. Like if you get dropped in like Brazil or something, I think you end up learning Portuguese or something because they're not as well off and there's no one speaking English that well over there.
Yeah. I think you'd need to get thrown into the shit. I knew a guy who spent 6 months on a farm in Germany somewhere, and then he was pretty fluent by the end of it. And he was from Whitby, which is like an hour north of, or an hour south of Peterborough. And I was with a German friend. He starts talking to this Canadian guy, and he figures out after 10 minutes that the guy is not from Germany.
Yeah.
And he realized he was from, near where I was from. And then the guy said, well, my secret is I spent 6 months on a farm, and that was it. And then he got the accent down, he got all the little words down. And that's pretty cool that you can get it done in that amount of time.
Yeah.
But I think he was just on probably some crappy little farm hanging out with one old guy. And so he probably took on all the old guy's little phrases in his accent. And but yeah, it's pretty cool. I don't know. I feel so bad for my girlfriend because I think I bring it up every single day.
Have you gone elsewhere in Australia?
East Coast to Melbourne, and I know I say it wrong, but to Melbourne, and I'm gonna go there and Melbourne. I don't like when I hear Canadians say Melbourne.
Brisbane?
Yeah, it doesn't work for me. I'm gonna just embrace the fact that I'm never gonna sound Australian, so I'm gonna say Melbourne.
How's it going?
Was that Australian or Canadian accent?
No, it's Australian.
Oh, okay.
But you see, if I was trying to do a Canadian accent, I would do the exact same thing.
What? How's it going?
How's it going?
Yeah, close enough.
I thought the Canadian accent was just like because I grew up watching Degrassi.
Oh, yeah.
And there's only like one character on there, I think Wheels, who has a real stereotypical Canadian accent. Like,
Wheels, wow. That's great.
Did you guys watch Degrassi there?
Yeah, all the time. And I just didn't realize that the original Degrassi got any play over here. I thought it was the Drake Degrassi.
Oh, it was huge.
The first
original,
one.
Yeah, it was massive.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Such a
I just
great show.
rewatched it because it was on streaming. It just got put on streaming, and they just torture the hell out of Wheels. They literally put all the crap on him.
Did you?
And he has the only one who's got like a Canadian accent, and
yeah. Oh yeah.
I didn't even know it was set in Canada when I was a kid. I thought it was set in America.
Yeah, I guess it would all kind of lump into a generic sort of high school bunch of kids. Did you know though that Wheels, it became a popular fact that he had died a couple of years after he had actually died?
Yeah.
Ah, it's so funny. Well, not funny. Sorry, no. Just so
tragic.
Strange. He's sort of like, in my mind, he occupies the same space as George Costanza in Seinfeld. He's sort of that hapless character that everyone loves.
Did you watch The Next Generation?
No, I don't think so.
I did go and watch some of it to try and see how the old characters fitted in.
Do you mean like Snake and Spike?
Yeah,
they got jobs as teachers.
Yeah. And the Spike's kid from the first series was a kid in the next series in the high school.
Do you mean the person who played the kid or the role?
The character. I don't think it was the same baby.
That would have been amazing. Very Canadian.
And Joey and Caitlin come back and they have a relationship for a bit. I can't remember if they end up getting married or not.
Wow.
Anyway, it was amazing that this continuity, they kept going, considering it's not like a soap opera or anything.
Yeah.
But then I stopped watching at some point, and apparently it went a bit crazy, I guess, with all the Drake fame and stuff like that. and they killed off a bunch of characters. And I was
really?
So I obviously didn't get that far. But
Yeah.
Anyway.
Oh yeah, I think the Canadian TV world is in some ways kind of small. Like if you are in Toronto, you sort of, I think everyone's got like a rich uncle who works or produced some sort of classic Canadian thing, or
right, yeah.
like it's kind of its own little bubble. There is a real Degrassi Street actually in Toronto as well, in the East End. So
yeah, well, before Degrassi, they had a show called Kids of Degrassi Street.
Oh, you
and it has some of the actors. It has some of the actors from the Degrassi Junior High, but they're not the same characters, but the same actors when they were kids, like real like young kids, I think.
They're not the same characters, so they become new characters.
Yeah.
Wow.
There's not actually. I don't think there's actually continuity other than the name and the actors between the Kids of Degrassi Street and Degrassi Junior High.
Right. The people behind it, then, they must have known that they were actually onto something big.
Yeah.
And they're like, okay, let's try again. And then that time it actually...
I don't know. And I don't even know if you can even see that series anymore, because whenever it comes out, I've got the DVDs of Degrassi. And because I had like a little screening of it. We had a Degrassi themed party, so I had to buy all the DVDs so we can have it playing in the background. This is like 10 years ago or something.
Oh. I was about to say, like, when was this? I would have gone.
No, it was a long, long time ago. And in fact, I never even ended up... It was funny how I bought the DVDs, but I ended up streaming them online, and I never actually watched the original DVDs.
I bet the originals are actually worth something now. I'm sure.
Maybe. I wonder if they're high. I meant to check, because they were I went to my mum's house for Easter, and they're down there. I meant to check to see if the DVDs were better quality than the streaming, because the streaming was like really low quality, even though it was like an official version. It wasn't. Yeah. It wasn't pirating it.
Because it would have been off tape, right? Just sort of broadcast.
Probably,
tape.
Yeah.
I remember I used to watch.
Well, I reckon it may have been shot. It looked like it was shot in film, because they did have shallow focus stuff in it. Yeah.
They did have shallow focus. Yeah.
Yeah, which I don't think you could do on tape back then.
Oh no, probably not. I think it got some serious funding. I mean, the fact that it actually was a nationwide Canadian show, if they funded it, I think they put it on TV. There's no messing around.
Yeah.
Yeah, that takes me back. I mean, I remember I used to go to the library with my mom and my sister, and there'd be all these different Degrassi books you could read about the characters, like sort of offshoots.
Yeah.
Yeah, just that whole world. And I'm nostalgic for it now, of course, because now that I've spent enough time in Australia, I realize that Canada has its own set of stuff that isn't American, and it's kind of, you know how you get that sort of, you can go down that path with a country's like nostalgic, weird shit. Like you could get obsessed with Iceland, and suddenly you're like looking at like old stuff to do with Bjork that only an Icelandic person would know. I'm starting to feel that way about Canadian stuff, and yet I grew up with it at the time, and I'm like, oh, this stuff's all so cheesy and horrible.
Yeah.
And now I'll see it on YouTube, like an old music video from the 80s. What was the one that I saw that was really brutal in a good way? It was like an artist named Kim Mitchell, who, like Mac DeMarco, obviously very famous now, but I feel like you could score extra points if you had to kill some time and were like, oh, fuck, what do we talk about? And you're just like, do you know Kim Mitchell? He'd be like, oh my God, yes, let's talk about him. Like, I feel like he definitely informed some of his artistic sensibility. Yeah. And he's, horrible and amazing at the same time.
Yeah.
And, watching that on YouTube, I thought, oh man, like, Canada was kind of cool in its own horrible way in the 80s and 90s. And I missed that. And I took it for granted, I think.
I guess because the people who I met who were Canadian, like I had a Canadian teacher and I had a friend of the family who was Canadian, and they were women that had really strong accents, and I just didn't make the connection to like Degrassi or anything like that, because I don't know whether they had it was just different regions have a different accent, or whether because they're actors, they have intentionally neutral accent to appeal to America.
Yeah, it could be. Where were these people from? The Canadians
no
that you know?
No.
I mean, Newfoundlanders definitely have a distinct accent. It's pretty crazy. Very nice people, but
have you ever been there?
Haven't been. No, very very expensive to travel in Canada. So I've probably seen more of everywhere else than Canada.
That's because it's just so big. Kind of like
just Australia. So big, yeah. So I've got a sister in Saskatchewan, and I think it costs the same to fly to Europe as it does to see her.
Yeah.
So I haven't been out to Saskatchewan yet.
It can be a bit like that in Australia. That we've got more competition now for airlines, so the prices are a bit better. But
seems like it's good to go to if you want to go to Melbourne.
Yeah.
It's pretty cheap to hop back and forth.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of competition on that route, so you get things. But like my the only family I have in Brisbane, where the flights are a lot more expensive because it's kind of like, it's almost like crossing the Atlantic. The similar distance, I guess, from east coast of America to Heathrow or something like that.
Right. And then you also have to fly with Tiger, which I hear is pretty bad.
Yeah, I probably wouldn't fly with them.
Yeah, that's the thing. This is very stingy, but I'll find a price on Tiger, and then I'll just go on to Jetstar and bug their chat people, and I'll just get them to match or beat the price by 10%. It's not my proudest thing to say, but
I always worry about flying in Australia because we've never had like a real accident since the jet age started, and so I figure on a long enough timeline, one of them is going to crash.
Right.
So we're getting closer and closer to that date.
Yes, I guess we are.
So drive to Melbourne. That was. You're actually statistically much more likely to die on the road, but
yeah. And yet, I would probably be like, I'm in control here. I'm going to drive. I didn't take a flight until I was like 21 because I was terrified of plane crashes.
Oh, right.
I grew up watching the show on TLC, which was like the Learning Channel.
Yeah.
And I think it was called, Plane Crash Investigations or something. And so every, Tuesday, I think it was even more than once a week, there'd be these shows where, they would start with like these two cocky pilots and their black box recording, making some kind of joke about them crashing. They'd be like, little did they know.
Yeah.
2 hours later, they were found here. And then, I just sort of thought, like, why are people taking airplanes if they keep crashing? That's all I could think about because I was quite young. But that got really ingrained in my mind. And, I also watched the movie Alive when I was in grade 1. That probably wasn't a good idea. The movie about the Chilean soccer team that gets sucked out of the plane in midair because it breaks open.
All right, yeah. And they end up eating each other?
They end up eating each other. I remember I was probably 6 years old, and I got to pick out a movie. I got to pick out a movie from Hojo's video. And I'm like, can I see Alive? And I think my mom was just sort of like, Alive, that's a nice title. Yeah, sure, John. And she didn't know that it was about that. And then I watched it in the basement alone. And so between that and all the shows about plane crashes, it took me a while to get over the idea of flying.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
I just accepted the fear at a young age. Well, that about wraps it up.
Oh, all right.
Thanks for coming on and giving us some background to who you are and giving us some perspective of what it's like to know what Degrassi is if you actually come from Canada, rather than this being this weird cult hit in here in Australia.
Yeah, I regret saying that Wheels Dying was funny. I don't think that. Love the guy. Love the character.
Okay, now I have to go. Apparently he did make a cameo in The Next Generation, so I'm going to have to go find that now.
He did? Wow.
Yeah, before he passed on.
If we did have another half hour to fill, I think we could probably fill it with, Degrassi, just all Degrassi related content, but maybe another time.
Yes, well, I don't want to leave you around too long. Anyway, do you have a place on the internet where people can find your stuff? Yeah,
my last name is spelt funny, so it's annoying to spell out, but it's JMCGOVARIN.com. So that's jmcgovern.com. Odd spelling of McGovarin. I'm going to have to get better at, hashing that out for people, but there it is.
Awesome. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
All right. See ya.
See ya.
Bye.